Here's a man who shattered aviation records that once seemed impossible. A man who dated Hollywood's most glamorous stars. A man who built a billion-dollar empire, and yet he died weighing just 90 pounds, with fingernails curled like claws, completely alone. This is the untold story of Howard Hughes, a genius who conquered the skies but couldn't conquer himself. The question nobody asks is, how does someone with that much brilliance fail so completely at being human? And more importantly, are you quietly making the same mistakes right now? Stick around, because what destroyed Howard Hughes might be quietly destroying your own potential too. Let's go back to Houston, Texas, 1905. Howard Robert Hughes Jr. is born into serious wealth. His father invented a revolutionary oil drill bit that made the family extremely rich. But here's where it gets dark. His mother, Allyn, was obsessively protective. She constantly checked him for illness, kept him isolated from other children, and convinced him the world was full of invisible dangers. By age 11, Howard had already built Houston's first wireless radio transmitter. At 12, he built a motorized bicycle. At 16, he was learning to fly planes. Then tragedy hit twice. His mother died when he was 16. His father died when he was 18. Overnight, the teenage millionaire owned a multi-million-dollar company. So what does a brilliant 18-year-old do? He moves to Hollywood. He produces Hell's Angels, one of the most expensive films of its era, costing $2.8 million in 1930, roughly $50 to $60 million in today's money. He dated some of the biggest stars at the time, including a serious relationship with Katharine Hepburn. He proposed to Ava Gardner and pursued others. He broke the transcontinental flight record, then the around-the-world record. He designed revolutionary aircraft. The man was unstoppable. But behind the genius, the cracks were already forming. He developed an intense fear of germs. He refused to shake hands. He wrote bizarre memos to staff about how to open cans without contamination. He fired people for coughing. By his 40s, he was living in darkened rooms, watching the same movies on repeat, refusing to cut his hair or nails, and surrounding himself with people who only enabled his decline. So here's the paradox. How does someone who conquered aviation, Hollywood, and business end up a prisoner of his own mind? This isn't a story about moral failure. It's a story about psychological failure, and the lessons are more relevant today than ever. Let's break down the 3 psychological forces that destroyed Howard Hughes. Once you see them, you'll start noticing them in your own life. 1. Emotional neglect and extremely low. Emotional intelligence. Hughes grew up in an environment of constant fear and control. Psychologists describe this as creating anxious avoidant attachment. He never learned to understand or manage his own emotions or connect with others. He could design revolutionary planes, but he couldn't maintain real relationships. Katharine Hepburn, one of the few people who truly knew him, described both of them as dedicated loners. Even with all his success, he felt profoundly isolated. Unfamiliar? Crushing it professionally, but struggling personally? That's the Howard Hughes trap. 2. Extreme hyperfocus that became self-destructive. Hughes didn't just focus, he obsessed. He spent years and millions perfecting Hell's Angels. When chasing flight records, he skipped sleep for days. After a near-fatal plane crash, in 1946 that fractured his skull and crushed his chest, he recovered and immediately went back to designing more planes. This kind of hyperfocus is powerful until it makes you neglect everything else: relationships, health, and simple human joys. How many just one more email moments have cost you time with family or friends? Hughes forgot birthdays, anniversaries, and entire relationships because he was always chasing the next achievement. 3. Perfectionism and the terror of being seen as less than perfect. Despite all his record-breaking success, Hughes was terrified of failure. When you're labeled a genius, any mistake feels like proof you're a fraud. So he started avoiding situations where he might fail. He stopped flying publicly, stopped attending premieres. His OCD became a way to control every possible variable. In trying to avoid failure, he failed at the things that actually matter most. The science behind it is clear, and childhood trauma and chronic stress rewired his brain, making the fear center, amygdala, hyperactive, while weakening the rational part that regulates emotion. His achievements became both his greatest strength and his prison. Society rewarded his dysfunction. The more obsessive he became, the more brilliant his work seemed. No one told him to slow down or get help. We still do the same thing today. We glorify the grind and burnout. So how do you avoid the Howard Hughes trap? Here are 4 practical steps. Step 1. Build real emotional intelligence. Start naming your emotions honestly. Practice asking people, "How are you really doing?" and actually listening. Share something vulnerable this week, not a humble brag, something real. High EQ people don't just earn more, they live happier, longer lives. Step 2. Balance your focus. Use time blocking. 90 minutes of deep work, then a real break. Every week, do something important but not urgent. Family time, exercise, hobbies. Create a shutdown ritual at the end of your workday so you actually switch off. Step 3. Reframe failure. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the price of it. Adopt a growth mindset. If something doesn't work, ask, "What did I learn? What will I do differently?" Done is better than perfect. Step 4. Build real connections. The longest study on happiness, Harvard's 85-plus-year study, found that the #1 predictor of long-term health and happiness isn't money or fame. It's the quality of your relationships. Find real friends. Be honest when you're struggling. Help others. Howard Hughes was extraordinary. He changed aviation forever and created Hollywood magic. But he also died alone, afraid, and broken. The same 3 forces that took him down: low emotional intelligence, destructive hyperfocus, and paralyzing perfectionism, are still quietly at work in high achievers today. You don't need to be a billionaire to fall into this trap. You just need to keep sacrificing relationships for success, presence for productivity, and progress for perfection. The good news? You're not stuck. You can choose differently. My challenge to you: pick just one of these 4 steps and do it this week. Text a friend you've been meaning to reach out to. Set a hard boundary at work. Start that thing you've been putting off because it won't be perfect. Then come back and tell me in the comments, what's your genius trap and how are you going to escape it? If this made you think, hit subscribe. Next week, we're looking at another genius who changed the world, but struggled with what was right in front of him. Until then, remember, you can conquer the world. or you can conquer yourself. Only one of those will actually make you happy.